Okay, so today I want to talk to you about an organization that trained with us in 2020. At the time after the lockdown was lifted, the countrywide lockdown was lifted, we were able to have a training both for local fundraising and for mobilizing support. So there's an organization whose initials is, we call them Kadolha in short. It's really long, but that's how we call them. But anyway, before I get to them, I just like to set the scene. For the Ugandans that are in the room with us, and maybe a few of our Dutch partners who have traveled, you know that one of our tourism sites for Uganda is really at the silverback gorillas. This is in southwestern Uganda, close to the border of Congo and of Rwanda. So the forest that this has now become a national site, has become a, how do you call it? A game park, a game park protected by the government, is where everybody goes to visit to see these silverbacks. And while they're there, they hear about a tribe called the BATWA, but they don't really get into it because, again, the interest is the silverback gorillas. So that forest is in southwestern Uganda, and we call it the windy impenetrable forest. Interestingly, it was home to a group of people that we call the BATWA. Now, until the 1990s, that was their home. That's where they lived. That's where they did everything. But when government wanted to reserve this forest, they were chased off the land, or they chased out of the forest. So what it meant is that they lost their livelihoods, they lost their homes, lost the way of living, and they had to become squatters on the land of others. Now, of course, because they were a bit of farmers, the only thing they could do is to work as bonded laborers on people's gardens. That is now in the districts of, I think, Rwanda, Kabale, Chisoro. So they moved to the districts that surround the forest, and that's where they started living their lives. Now, I mean, no home, no land, no livelihood. They're not a very big people. They're about 6,200. And I mean, they were hunters. They ate from the forest, they live in the forest, and they still practice Asian traditions. So for them, life became hard. I mean, you'd think life in the forest was hard, but that was life to them. But then it got harder when they were sent off. This is a picture of the BATWA people. Many of them are pygmies. I think the tallest person in that picture is one of the staff of Kadolha. But this is what an indigenous Mutwa person would look like, right? Being a Mutwa is hard because healthcare services is not something you can come across every day. We are told that out of 234 households, only 13 people can visit a health facility. Now, for those of us who go to the doctor every time something is wrong, that tells you that, I mean, only 13 people in 6 months or a year. Infant mortality rate is high. I mean, they have no homes. They live in, I would call them shanties. Most times you find them sleeping on the ground, just in a sweater, or sometimes not even covered. Poverty levels are high. Food is not assured. And because that region is really cold, especially in the rainy season, it gets much colder, they revert to drinking alcohol to keep them warm. So alcoholism is really high. Now, it is so bad that sometimes they even have sex for alcohol, just to keep them warm, keep them alive. I mean, it's something to keep them busy. So if they're not digging, they're drinking. And then, of course, that means that you'll sleep where your head falls. So, of course, HIV rates are high. There are stories you hear when you're working with the people, with our partners that side, about how they share wives or they exchange wives, exchange partners. So being a Mutwa is not one of the best things. And you would imagine that in the world we live in, the century that we're in, that this actually happens in the corner of our country. But that's the reality of being a Mutwa. So their future is really bleak. Their lives are really hard. So enter Kadolha. This organization is working with vulnerable children living HIV/AIDS. But one of the things they do is that they work with the BATWA. They try to help them to change their lives. This is a picture we took during the coaching we had after our training, because part of our training trajectory is that we don't only train you in the classrooms, but we follow you to your ecosystem to understand better how you work and help you apply our lessons taught in the classroom to your reality. So we visited them. There is a gentleman, this gentleman in the middle, I think is the tallest Mutwa I know and the most educated of the whole 6,200. He happens to work with this organization. So the team is not very big. They're really young, energetic people. They haven't gone very far. It's not like many of them have masters or PhDs or doctors, but they really feel for the communities they work with. I mean, imagine them on a motorcycle in the rains, driving up the hills and into the valleys to reach these people. And the conditions that they find them in are heartbreaking. I mean, sharing their stories, much of the time, they're almost in tears. And this gentleman here is their success story. So you can imagine for whole people, one person is a success story. But anyway, after our training, the staff of Kadolha came back and they were able to do a number of things. Please remember that because it was a border district, lockdown persisted and there were so many limitations to movement, but they were able to do a number of things. One, they talked to the district local government. They were able to mobilize all the BATWA to one center because they wanted to have a health camp. And like we said earlier, healthcare is hard for them to find. So they put their feeling, their emotions, their care to action, and they used the skills we gave them and said, no, let's talk to local government. Let's find a way to extend these services at a time of COVID to the BATWA people. So of course, with the skills we give them, they talk to these people and then they help them buy into their story, and they're provided with vehicles and fuel for 3 days, as well as free medicine to go serve the BATWA, who we said cannot get healthcare in a year or even in 6 months. I show you numbers of 15 people were screened and immunized for hepatitis B. Someone will think those are few, but for people who never see medical care, that's a huge number. 120 children immunized, that too is a huge number. Elderly people receiving treatment. And I must say their problems are really small, from having jiggers to the normal cough, to malaria, to skin diseases. For them, this health cap was something because it was not something they could think about on their own. But Kadolha made it possible after the training we gave them. We had referrals to hospitals, people with HIV were being treated. And as a result, the district health teams agreed that actually they needed to give more support to the BATWA, and then entered formal arrangements with Kadolha because, I mean, this is where Kadolha works. So it is very easy for them to go on with their partners to service these people. So there's been a bit of progress. And I think if I were Mutwa, I'd be happy because, I mean, I never saw a doctor. I had aches and pains, and all of a sudden, an organization has made this possible. And I didn't have to spend a single shilling because, I mean, we are poor. We would not have money to pay for this. This is a picture of Amos, the boss of, the head of Kadolha, treating jiggers in an elderly woman. And like I said, their problems are really simple. The rest are all waiting for their turn. And for me, this is a story that really touched my heart because one would think, okay, to solve these problems, you'd need a lot of money. You'd need some kind of intervention that was huge. But with the training that we gave Kadolha, they understood that it's not about cash. It was about solving the need at the time. And like I said, it was during COVID, they were not digging, they had no income. Kadolha staff also solicited food, and this was 2,000 kilograms of maize flour. They also were able to raise other items by pitching to local Rotary clubs. I mean, COVID, wash your hands, but these people don't have clean water. They don't even have soap. So the small things that the Kadolha staff decided they could do to help make the lives of the BATWA better. These are pictures of the food being distributed. I mean, the food came from businessmen in Kabale town, the beans, the maize flour. I mean, for you who has not been able to, you not know where you'll get your next meal, this is a godsend. It's practically manna from heaven. And this was only possible because the mindsets of the Kadolha staff were changed after they went through our training. Of course, just to tell you where and when this food was taken, how many people got this. I mean, for a small group of 6,200, this was a huge input into their lives, right? Since many could not even afford 3 meals a day, but all of a sudden they were sure that, yes, I mean, there's something. So Kadolha was able to touch their lives in more ways than they'd ever planned in their offices or in their proposals to donors or in their intervention areas. They saw a need and they used the skills and the ideas they had gotten, and they helped to make people's lives better. Now, you'll ask me why I'm telling you about Kadolha and I'm telling you about the BATWA, but it can't get any more practical than that. You have a small organization, very few staff, not a lot of funding, but doing big things, making big changes in the lives of many, developing a people who are ancient and sometimes called backward, caring about their needs. Andrew Hingre is one of the staff, and he says it changed his thinking about fundraising. He knew that it could only be done from rich countries, but now he knows that it can be done successfully locally. And can be done successfully locally because his understanding of fundraising was changed from just money, but to encompass in kind. And in this case, in kind was the health teams that came and took the expertise to the health camp to treat the BATWA. In time. So the health teams give time, and then the medicines from the health center are in kind. The food, in kind. The support from the Kadolha is in kind. At no point in my story have I talked about money. At no point in my story have I said, oh, so-and-so gave us this number of shillings, maybe Wilda Hansa sent us a few euros. No. All this was made possible because money was taken out of the equation, and the understanding is that the funds this time had to be in kind and in time. In kind was the health treatment, the health facilities, the medicines, right? In kind was the food, the clothes, and then the time of the district people, the doctors and the Kadolha staff. And a problem was solved. At no point have we talked about money. Amos, the executive director, talks about how our training on mobilizing support helped him approach the district health officials. In fact, he swears that if he had not been taught on how to get others to support their initiatives through our mobilizing support training, he would not have been able to mobilize the health teams and convince them to go to the BATWA and have that health camp, right? All the negotiations for transport and the coordinators and the camp days, and even a formal letter endorsing their movement, because at that time we were restricted. He swears that it would not have been possible. He would never have thought about it if it had not been for the training that we had. And like I said earlier, these are things that we know. We do them without even thinking about them, but when we structure how we do them, we're able to get more out of them. And for me, this is the most practical way I can explain to you. This story is not old. It happened quite recently. It hasn't even been 6 months. People are happier. Needs have been achieved. Desires have been met. And there's a happier people because we took it out of our minds that it's about money and about foreign help, and just thought to ourselves, what can we do within our communities with what we have? Ladies and gentlemen, for me, this is like one of our success stories that I always talk about. And I encourage you to really think about what it meant, the sacrifices it took for the team from Kadolha. Yes, they did the 5 days, but I mean, many people study and don't go back. But what it took to really, really say, okay, we can do this. The power lies with us. It does not have to be Wilda Hansa or our Dutch partners. They can help, yes, but we can do this on our own. For me, this is the practical application I present to you of how Change the Game works. Thank you.